The morning it happened, I was halfway through my first sip of coffee when the sound of a car door slamming outside made me freeze. It wasn't unusual to hear traffic this early, but something about the rhythm, sharp, deliberate, like punctuation, pulled me to the window. My driveway was blocked, again, not by accident, not by chance. A silver Lexus sat dead center across the concrete, angled just enough to make it clear this wasn't a parking mistake. The same car, the same woman, the same smug tilt of her sunglasses as she strutted toward her house across the street like she owned the neighborhood. Karen Prescott, president of the Maplewood Meadows HOA, 52, sharp bob haircut, and the kind of person who thought clipboards were power symbols. She'd been on my case since the day I moved in. First about my truck, then about my mailbox color, and now this. "Unbelievable," I muttered, setting the mug down so hard it splashed onto the counter. I grabbed my phone and started filming. 3 weeks of her blocking my driveway, sometimes with her Lexus, sometimes with trash bins, accidentally left there. I'd sent photos to the HOA, called her office, even filed a complaint with the city. Nothing changed. If anything, she seemed to enjoy it more every day. When I stepped outside, the air bit with that late fall chill, the kind that smelled faintly of wet leaves and gasoline. My boots hit the concrete, and my breath fogged in front of me. "Morning, Karen," I called. "Your car's blocking my driveway again." She didn't even look up. Just waved her coffee cup dismissively, like I was a background extra in her perfect suburban movie. "It's only temporary," she said without turning. "The city's got new parking limits. You might want to read the guidelines before making a scene." That word, scene, landed like a slap. I kept my tone calm, but my jaw clenched. "There are no new parking limits," I said. "I checked the bylaws last night." She finally turned then, that practiced smile tightening. "I'm sure you did, Tom. But as HOA president, I make sure the rules are interpreted correctly." The arrogance was almost elegant in how casual it sounded. Later that morning, I sent her another formal complaint. By the next day, I got a notice taped to my door. Unauthorized use of commercial equipment on residential property, a $200 fine. My truck, a simple Ford F-150, with toolboxes in the bed, was suddenly classified as industrial machinery. I laughed out loud. Then I stopped laughing, because I realized she wasn't bluffing. She'd decided to make me an example. I called my brother, an engineer with more patience than sense, and said the same 5 words I'd used during our last argument with a crooked contractor. "I need something permanently immovable." 2 weeks later, his flatbed pulled into my yard, carrying 4 concrete planters, each one weighing nearly a ton. We positioned them at the edge of my driveway, just inside my property line. Massive, smooth gray, beautiful in their defiance. They weren't just planters. They were barricades. Karen watched from her window that day, her face unreadable behind tinted glass. When we finished, I filled them with soil and planted dwarf pines, the kind that grow slow but steady, like patience made visible. That night, the neighborhood was quiet except for the faint hum of distant traffic. I sat on the porch, the cold air cutting through my jacket, watching headlights slide past the planters. Every time they caught the edge of that concrete, a small smile crept up my face. She wanted a war of inconvenience. I'd built a fortress. I didn't sleep much that night, kept replaying her smirk in my mind, her tone, the way she wielded authority like a weapon. But for the first time since moving to Maplewood, I didn't feel cornered. For the first time, I felt ready. The letter arrived 3 days later, not in a mailbox, taped dead center to my front door, like a scarlet notice in some old western town. The HOA logo at the top was printed in bold navy ink, followed by a paragraph so perfectly passive-aggressive it could have been written by Karen herself. "You are hereby notified that unauthorized obstructions have been installed at the end of your driveway in violation of Article 7, Section 4 of the Maplewood Meadows HOA Covenant. You are required to remove them within 72 hours or face daily fines and potential legal action." I read it twice. Then a third time, slower, savoring every veiled threat. Karen had made her move. That evening, I walked down to the planters, running my hand over the cold concrete. They weren't going anywhere, not without a crane. Each one sat squarely within my survey line, confirmed by a county map I'd printed the day I bought the house. She couldn't touch them legally, but that didn't mean she wouldn't try. The next morning I noticed something new. A small yellow flag in my yard, the kind utilities use to mark underground lines. Then another. Then a row of them, leading from my fence to the planters. She'd called in a fake utilities check. By noon, a city truck showed up. 2 workers looking confused as they stepped out. I walked over before they could start digging. "You guys got a request for this property?" I asked. The older one nodded, checking his clipboard. "Yeah, says here you're doing foundation work. Just marking the gas and water lines." "Not me," I said, showing my ID. "And I'm not authorizing any digging." He frowned, double-checked the address, and then muttered something under his breath before walking back to the truck. "Happens more than you'd think," he said as they drove off. I watched them leave, feeling that familiar burn crawl up my neck. She wasn't content with fines. She wanted control, complete humiliating control. That night I installed a motion camera facing the driveway. One of those high-resolution types with night vision and automatic alerts. If she so much as set foot near my property again, I'd have evidence. Sure enough, at 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I pulled up the feed. Karen, in a robe, holding a flashlight and a clipboard. She was pacing near the planters, shining her light over the concrete, jotting notes and shaking her head like some disappointed school principal. Then she crouched, just barely within the edge of my property, and tried to stick a notice of violation under one of the pots. She looked up once, scanning the street. The light caught her face, tight, bitter, determined. I recorded every second. The next morning, I printed still frames from the footage, circled her outline in red, and attached them to a formal complaint to the county zoning board. The subject line read, "Harassment and Trespassing by HOA President." I sent copies to the city clerk, the sheriff's office, and, for good measure, the HOA's own legal counsel. That afternoon, Karen came storming down my driveway, waving a stack of papers. "You think this is funny?" she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" I leaned against the porch rail, calm as stone. "I documented harassment and trespassing on private property. You should probably consult your lawyer before setting foot here again." Her nostrils flared. "Those planters violate community aesthetics." "Then change the aesthetic," I said. She pointed a finger at me. "You've made a mistake, Tom. You think rules don't apply to you." "No," I said quietly. "I just think they apply to everyone, even you." She turned on her heel and stormed back toward her Lexus. Gravel crunched under her tires as she backed out, stopping only long enough to roll down her window and spit out one final line. "You'll regret this." The next morning, she made sure I started to. I woke to a bright orange sticker on my truck windshield. "Unauthorized vehicle, subject to tow." I laughed. She wasn't even subtle anymore. Fine. She wanted a paper war? I had ink to spare. By the end of that week, my driveway looked like a battlefield of bureaucracy. Fines, notices, violation tags, all neatly laminated and taped to my fence, my gate, even my mailbox. Each one with Karen's signature scrawled at the bottom, like she thought her pen carried the weight of the law. But that was her mistake. Because while she was busy playing sheriff of suburbia, I was gathering something far more powerful. Proof. Every letter. Every trespass. Every frame from my security cameras, logged and time-stamped. I built a folder thicker than a legal brief. Then I did what she least expected. I called the county recorder's office and ordered a certified land survey. 2 men in neon vests showed up a few days later, equipment in hand. They spent hours pacing my property, driving stakes into the soil, checking measurements twice. I could see Karen watching from her porch the whole time, phone pressed to her ear like she was reporting a crime. When they were done, one of the surveyors handed me the results. Boundary lines, official seal, and a single sentence that made my day. All contested features, including decorative planters, are located within the owner's legal property limits. I didn't even need to say a word. I just made 3 copies, one for the HOA, one for my lawyer, and one taped squarely to my front gate. By sunset, Karen was at my door again. "You think this piece of paper changes anything?" She snapped. "No," I said. "It just proves everything. Her face twisted. "You're violating the community's harmony." "Karen," I said slowly, "you broke onto my land at midnight with a flashlight and a clipboard." "I'm not the one out of harmony here." She folded her arms, trying to stare me down. "Then maybe we'll see what a judge thinks." I stepped closer, eyes level. "I dare you to sue." The silence that followed was heavy. Even the cicadas stopped for a moment. Then she turned, muttering something about lawyers and violations, and stormed off toward her car again. I thought it was over, but it wasn't, not quite. 2 weeks later, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. I showed up in jeans and boots, a stack of papers under my arm. Karen was there too, arms crossed, lips tight. She started the meeting by calling me a disruptive presence to community order. I responded by distributing the survey, the trespass photos, and the county complaint letter confirming that her actions had violated property rights. One board member, an older man named Richard, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "Karen, this doesn't look good," he said softly. She tried to talk over him, but the board wasn't listening anymore. They'd seen enough. By the end of that meeting, Karen's title as HOA president was temporarily suspended pending review, which, in plain English, meant she was done. As I walked out, the evening sun cut through the trees, lighting the edges of the planters she'd tried so hard to remove. I smiled. The land was quiet again. Mine again. Sometimes people like Karen forget. The rules they wield so proudly can cut both ways. You just have to know how to hold the blade, and I held it steady,